Good evening and welcome to the Grace Talk. If you're joining us today on Facebook or radio, or if you're watching on YouTube, we would like to welcome you to our show. My guest today is Ken Parker. Ken's story is one of the most inspirational stories that you would ever hear. This is a man who, by all accounts, should be a statistic. But instead, he defied the odds. He overcame incredible challenges to become a top executive and corporate officer in a Fortune 500 company. This is a story of hope, a story of faith and grace. And here to tell us his story in his own words is my guest, Ken Parker. Ken, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Gloria. It's an honor to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you and we've worked together, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so I was born and raised in southern New Jersey, and youngest or the ninth of 10 children for Ella Melba Parker and Willie Lee Parker. At the tender age of 2 years old, my mother passed away at 41 years old. And subsequently after that, my father left the family and left all the children behind. We went in the foster care system for a period of time, and by the grace of God, my sister Patricia Parker, the oldest, pulled us all out of foster care and raised us. And I thank God for that. I'm also married to Sherry Lynn Parker for 28 years, and I have two young adults, Ken Jr. and Lauren Parker.
Wow, married to Sherry for 28 years. Sherry, I can tell you, and you know I've been on Ken's team for a while, and Ken is crazy about Sherry. He tells me all the time that God gave him just the right woman. When he was not, he wasn't the man that he is now. And there was no way you could have seen that, but you believed in the man that he was. He told me that he met you when he was a property manager. And you believed in him, and you stood behind him all these years. Thank you. What an inspiration, you guys, your marriage are. And I have seen you guys again in public settings and in private settings. You know, Sherry is a quiet, elegant, poised woman. You don't find her in a lot of arguments. She carries herself with dignity. And that's one of the things I love about her. She doesn't talk much. She's dignified, she's quiet, and she communicates with that, just the poise that she has. Do you agree to, well, of course you do.
I fully agree with that, and if I can set some context too, I graduated high school in 1981 and went to school at Delaware State University. And I went to my junior year and then basically decided not to go back to college. I joined the electric company in a summer program and then ultimately became a janitor. So Sherry met me at the point when I was really trying to define and figure out who I was. I think the Lord was taking me on this journey. And she met me at a place and time when I didn't have much in terms of materialistic things. All I had is love and the love that she gave me. And so, it's a beautiful thing to be married to someone who just loves you for who you are.
That's right.
And that's the most beautiful thing about Sherry. And also she loves God. And that stability that she provided me helped me begin to get my footing and actually start to develop as a young man.
That's amazing. That's obvious. That's just a phenomenal story right there and where you guys are. But take us back. So now your mother died when you were 2 years old. What happened after that?
Yes.
I know that you went into the foster care system. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I had been in the foster care system for about 6 to 7 year period of time. And my sister Patricia at that time of my mother's passing was only 22 years old. And she was the oldest, but imagine that, 22 years old. And her mother dies. And I should add to the story too, when my father left, he was subsequently shot and killed. And he left the children behind and told my sister he could not handle all that responsibility. But I think the most important thing about Patricia, and I truly believe this, that God sent us an angel. Because here's an individual at 22 years old, just graduated college and just sacrificed her life for her brothers and sisters. And when we were in the foster care system, we were never considered like we were alone. She was always there. She was a teacher, so she worked with the foster care parents to say that, hey, maybe I could take my brothers and sisters on the weekend. Maybe I can tutor them. So the most critical part is that God placed her there, that we were never alone. We may have been in a foreign place or a different place in the foster care systems, but she stayed with us until such time that she brought us back.
Wow. Every time I listen to your story, it takes my breath away. Patricia, if you're watching us today, I want to let you know that we honor you. We honor the woman that you are, the sacrifice that you made and laid your life down for your family. Ken's story is your success story. The fact that you supported him and laid down your own life to take care of your siblings is an amazing testimony. And I believe that God honored your sacrifice, and he's sitting here today. So thank you so much for the example that you are. And thank you so much for your sacrifice. We honor and applaud you, Patricia, for what you did. So now, Ken, let's go back. This is just a story that is developing. Your mother dies when you were 2 years old.
Yeah.
And you don't know your mom and your dad, right?
No, I don't know my mother and father. All I have is pictures and then stories. And that the stories have helped me to understand who they were at their core in terms of individuals. And so my mother loved her children, you know, deep in her heart. She also cleaned homes in South Jersey and some of the Italian farms where we live. But what they described and told me is that she loved her children unconditionally. And one of the messages that she had put through our family, and it still holds, we have a plaque in each one of our homes that was given to us, a saying that she would always say. We don't know if she developed it or if it was someone else, but she would say, don't down the one who's down today. Help them in their sorrow. This old world is a funny old world, and you may be down tomorrow. So although I didn't know her, that saying alone has defined that of who my mother is, and one day I'll have the opportunity, I truly believe, to see her. And my father, and despite the fact that he left, and one could look at that in a very negative way, he was a hard-working person. But you know, in life you find that all of us have challenges, and all of us have opportunities to improve. So I truly don't understand the full reason of why he left. I do believe it was a big responsibility. And when you think about it, he was married, not making any justification for him leaving. But to watch what my mother was doing to hold that family together and to see her leave, I'm sure that has some tremendous impact as well. But one day maybe I'll learn more about what that story is about. But you know, I love my mother, you know, and my father. Without them, I wouldn't be here, without God. So, you know, I love them unconditionally, even though I did not meet them. The stories my brothers, my sisters, and people within the community tell me about them holds me.
Wow. So you are, you know, 2 years old, your mother passed away, and your dad was overwhelmed by having to care for so many children, and he thinks, I can't do this. And so he left. And you guys were put into the foster care system for about, did you say 6 or 7 years?
Yeah, and let me set some context for you. So for that period of time, you know, when you now don't have your mother or your father, the state, there was a period of time where Pat had to come in and try to help. But you know, back then in the state of New Jersey, for instance, actually placed us in foster care. You know, it's very difficult for a 22-year-old to take responsibility for 9 people. And so it goes over a course of that little transitional period with her. Then we go into foster care, and then she brings us home.
Okay.
But she goes steadfast to stay with us.
That's it. Thank you for making that
Yes.
connection. So your father leaves. She tries to manage this on her own. The state comes in and says, you're 22 years old. You can't do this. You have 9 siblings. You can't do this by yourself. And they put you guys in foster care. But she kept touch with you. She visited you guys. She connected with you. And when she graduated and became a teacher. She came back for you guys.
Yeah, and the time around when she graduated high school, because she graduated Glassburst Teachers College, and for some who are listening to this, and now Rowan University, she was a teacher, and that was critical. And I want to say too, when we were placed in foster care, our first foster care home, Pat was instrumental in finding the place where we would be placed.
Wow.
Because of her connection to a gentleman that she was dating at the time.
Wow. Hang on. So not only was she trying to take care of you guys, when they said you can't do this by yourself, she helped to find the family where you were placed.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What a remarkable woman.
Yes. And remarkable. And the amazing part about that, we go from that foster care setting, and then we were shifted to another foster care facility. And that facility was a little bit tougher, or that home we were at. It was tougher because we were with older foster parents. Mm-hmm. And they had children, and they had grandchildren. So there was some animosity of why would you take on these foster care kids when you have your own biological children and grandchildren. But once again, Pat never leaves. We're never alone.
She is your guardian angel. She was there every step of the way.
Yes.
So now, Ken, I know you not just as an executive and as a leader, but I know you as a father and as a husband. And sometimes one of the things I find amazing is having the kind of dad that you had, who walked out on his family because he couldn't just be there for them. He left. But you are an amazing husband and father to your kids, and I've seen you with your kids. How did you get from that legacy of abandonment and being an orphan and not having a role model in your own dad to being the man that you are today, married 28 years with your wife and your children? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I want to say is that we all know, God is in control.
Yes, he is.
And we all know that we're not perfect human beings. So I try to be the best father I can. But what the Lord taught me early on, and it's been beautiful, I would watch TV and look at examples of what father would be like. And as a young father, the Lord would give me those examples. Or look at people within the community that were fathers. So modeling by example is critical. Not reading books, just watching and maybe pulling different pieces from individuals and applying it. The most important thing is that though you always are still learning and growing to be a parent. From my perspective, there's some good things and there's some things that you wish you could have done differently and do better. But the thing that I want to say is I want to stay in that partnership with my wife and stay in there with my son Ken Jr. and Lauren till the end, till I transition. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect, but I'm committed.
That's right.
To staying there and to hanging there with the family and being supportive, because that's what I've seen. That's what I've experienced. You think about my sister. She never walked away. And I want to stay there in the trenches with my family and extended family and watch them grow and develop.
Thank you for being a faithful man.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a faithful father. Because that's really what we're talking about. None of us, the kids, they don't come with a manual. Nobody knows how to be a good dad or a good mom. But I think the most important thing is to commit and to hang in there and to stay there. And that's what you've committed to do, and I've seen you do that. So I really respect and honor that. And again, I thank God for you and for your family.
If I could just say one other thing too, because I would be remiss if I didn't say that. In a very interesting way, I talked about it as being a young father and modeling by example, but Sherry's father has been an example of what a father should be, my father-in-law. Like teaching and coaching me. And that's been beautiful.
Praise God.
And he's a Christian man. He's a deacon in the church. But to watch him there again modeling.
That's amazing. So God not only gave you a wife, but He gave you a model of what a father should be in her dad.
Yes.
So now, Ken, let's go back. So you are 2 years old. Your dad is gone. Your mom is gone. Your sister is your guardian angel, watching over you guys and keeping track with you. So how did you go from there to sitting here today as a corporate executive, as a corporate officer and a top executive? Did you think you would get this far?
I never believed I would get there. As I look back at my 30 years of being in utility companies, starting with Atlantic City Electric in New Jersey, and then ultimately Pepco Holdings, and then being part of Exelon, I never thought about the journey in a chronological order. It's like the Lord placed these things in front of me and put me in different places in time. There was at one point in my career that I understood where I was. It was when I became the president of Atlantic City Electric that the good Lord gave me people that said, do you know where you're at?
Do you realize
where you are at this particular time? But when I started as a summer helper cutting lawns, and then being the janitor, and then going into government affairs and the right of way and vice president and president, I had 15 different jobs as I led up to the senior vice president job. But there's one thing that my sister always taught me that I applied to each one of those jobs. She said to do each one of those jobs as if it's your last job. Do it to your best of your ability. And I say that to my children, I say that to my nieces and nephews and the young people, that no matter what job you have, you do the best job you can as if it's the last job you have.
That's right.
So when I was the landscaper, I would cut lawns in a way in which people would just say, who cut those lawns? I would clean floors and clean windows and clean toilets, and to the point that some people would write notes and say, you've done an outstanding job. This place is just beautifully clean.
Wow.
And I never let the job define me or demean me. I was blessed to have the job. Each job I have, I was blessed. And each job I had was for a purpose.
Wow.
But I never, to your question, I never believed that I would ever rise to the levels of going to ultimately report to a CEO and chairman. And I saw previously we had Joe Rigby here and Tom Shaw. But I look back at my life, I can just look at so many different people that helped me, whether they're family, all the encouragement that you gave me each step in the way when sometimes I was down and overwhelmed with the different jobs I had. But over the course of time, there's just been a broad family of people just rooting me on, encouraging me, giving me opportunity, lifting me up when I was down. So I haven't been able to accomplish this alone, but God's placed these different people in my life. I've been blessed for that. Because I've had people that have just come to help me just because. And I know that's God sent.
Ken, I tell you, and again, for folks, I was on Ken's team for many years and been in the trenches with him and seen him, and he reported to Joe Rigby, the guy who was here 2 weeks ago. Just an incredible man in the work ethic. I want to pull out some of the things that you said, Ken, and emphasize that, because what Ken was saying is something that if you've been listening to us, you hear the same thread throughout. Your job that you're doing now, your current job, is your best job. Do it with the best ability that God has given you. That's what Ken is saying. He said, when I was a landscaper, I did it so good that people talked about it. When I cleaned the toilets, I was so good that they would write notes about how clean my toilets were. That's what you're saying. Do your job with a spirit of excellence, and you're going to grow just by doing your job the very best way that you can. Ken, thank you. So what are the tips that you would give to other people who have an entry-level job, and they're looking to grow? What would be the tips that you would give them?
First, I would say too, I think people, when you're going into a job, just be humble, understand what the core responsibilities of the job, do the job well. Also, I think it's important to get along with people. I'm a big proponent of that that being able to get along with your coworkers or the customers that you're serving, you have to do that as well. And understand too that there's also going to be some moments of setbacks, but you got to get back up and get back on this horse and ride that horse, and don't get discouraged. And I will say this too, and throughout my career, there's always been people who've encouraged me, but just to be honest and frank here, there's also individuals that have also not been as helpful or discouraging.
And that's putting it mildly, right?
And just trying to put that mildly in the spirit, but you have to overcome that as well in these positions as well. That every day isn't going to be this sunny day. There are going to be some challenges. There are going to be people who discourage you and that don't want you to achieve. I can speak from that firsthand.
That's right.
But the key is to stay positive.
That's right.
And don't adopt that spirit of discouragement.
That's right.
So those are some of the tips I would give.
Now, one of the things that you're really, really good at is networking. You have an incredible network, and you know how to build just a very supportive and widespread network. Talk to us about how important is it to have a network? And second of all is, how do you build a good network to support you?
So, early on I talked about working hard, doing the job, but there's no question that it's important to have a network of people that you can count on. Also, a network of people that you can, more importantly, trust, that can give you honest and open feedback on how you're doing and how you're progressing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. And I think the one tip I would say to people, don't make it artificial. Be genuine that you're trying to build these networks. I think people can read through when people are trying to be artificial when trying to develop relationships. And I think that's important. That will be found out over time. Most of my network is based on, say, trust and content. It's not artificial. Because I don't think the artificial relationships will sustain themselves over time.
Absolutely, because people are going to see through that.
They will see it.
People see if it's fake. People see if there's no trust. What I'm hearing from Ken is, I take the time to build trust. And I take the time to build relationships that are genuine. People know that I truly care. Mm-hmm. I'm not just there to take whatever I can, because people see through that. They see when you're not genuine, and they see when you're there just looking out for your own self or to take advantage of people. Exactly. So again, being there, being truly connected with people, caring genuinely about people, not faking it, because they're going to see through that. Over time, they build trust, and they can, they can work with you. Now, Ken, I would ask you right here, what are some of the mistakes that you made early on? If you could do it over, are there some things that you would change, and what would those be?
I've been thinking about this for the past, say, 10 months. I retired at the end of 2017. So I have a tendency to kind of look back on things that I thought worked well, and then things that I think I could have improved on. And it always comes back to me, and I'm this type of person. I think it's the Parker way we've been raised, is what could I have done more for the people? You think about all the good things that you did to try to help people throughout their career. But then you think about different circumstances and situations that if I could do some do-overs, I would do them. And they may play out a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And that's the tough part about leadership. You don't always get it right on who you may select for a position or for an assignment, and those things like that. So I have a tendency to kind of look in that mirror and but you know what?
It is what it is, right?
It is what it is.
And you did your best. And in fact, when I'm listening to you, it goes back to that same message that you heard from your mom. Do not down those who are down, right? I'm trying to remember it.
Yeah, don't down the one who's down today. Help them in their sorrow. This old world is a funny old world, and you may be down tomorrow. But the beauty of it is that even with the mistakes that I may have made with some of the people types of issues, what did I learn from it? And what can I do on a going forward basis to still make impact in people's lives and not repeat those mistakes?
That's really what counts. Now, what motivates and inspires you? You mentioned that you just retired. You know, you're now kind of almost 1 year into retirement. What motivated and inspired you before, and what is motivating and inspiring you now?
The biggest joy that I like is always trying to help to elevate people, to support them. Like the beauty of it right now that I'm enjoying right now is I think about Sherry, and I think about all the hours that I put in the company. I used to work early in my career, 4 to 12, 12 to 8 shift. I would do, for the past 10 years, I did 16, 17 hours a day of working. So now I have the time to put back in with Sherry that joy of helping and supporting her and her efforts, my children, my nieces and nephews, and trying to be an encouragement to other people that are not just in our family. That motivates me. I get joy out of seeing people grow and develop and achieve what they're trying to accomplish in this world. So I hold on to that, and I'm enjoying that part of retirement at this time because now I have more time to concentrate on that.
It was funny, we had Joe Rigby here a couple weeks ago, and he had the same thing. He loves to work around the house.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he has grandchildren, he's investing in them. So it's really a beautiful thing to transition into that part of your life. Now, your degree is in early childhood education. And you ended up working and corralling, you know, politicians and and local leaders, you know, state leaders, national leaders, and you have spent time with the then President of the United States. You've spent time with Barack Obama when he was the President of the United States. So how did you come from where you were, from early childhood education to working with politicians and all that? Was it like herding cats?
Yeah, it's hurting cats for sure. But you know, it's interesting. I'll set the stage on two pieces. So with Patricia Parker, my sister who raises all of us, we get this we get this gift of basically be honest, be truthful, support your family, and stay committed. And then I had a sister named Aletha Wright, who passed away many years ago. She's one of the great politicians in New Jersey. She was one of the great ones in Camden City, New Jersey, who helped the poor, who helped the homeless in the city. So I get from her this kind of piece of the community piece. So combining Patricia with Aletha, I get this beautiful, you know, it's almost like I get the sternness right on my sister Patricia, but I get the finesse piece from Aletha. But guess what happens to me? At a young age, I decided to run for the school board. I was criticizing at a young age, oh, the school board needs to do better. And my sister Aletha, this is where it starts, said, wow, that's interesting. You can sit back and criticize people. Maybe you should run and see what it means to be in that leadership role to make a difference. It's not as easy as you think it is. And I ran for the school board at the age of 21 years old. And I lost. And then I ran again and I won. And then I began to get involved in politics. That's how it started.
Wow.
And my family was always in education and social services, but that's when I started to cut my teeth. I had to knock on doors to earn votes and have a platform of what I was going to stand for on the school board. And that's when I began to get involved in politics. And then I started getting involved with my sister's elections.
Wow.
And that's how it began.
So you really were involved in grassroots politicking and getting votes out and connecting with the community that early?
At the core, in my first election, I lost by an overwhelming amount. My second election, I was the top vote getter.
Wow.
But I was pushing on the system, the established system. But I learned a lot about grassroots politicking and what it meant to build votes and get support.
Wow, that is amazing. I knew a part of that, but I didn't understand how deeply you were involved. Now, Ken, one of the things that really we heard from some of our prior speakers here was around mentoring and the role that mentoring can play. You already mentioned Sherry's father, who was there as a role model for you. Can you talk to us about the role that mentoring has played in your career?
Oh, it's been significant, and the truth be told about the mentoring, I've had people from all walks of life that have mentored me. I'll give you an example of a gentleman, for example, what it means to be mentored. I'm going up back over 25 years ago, and the gentleman's probably listening to this show. His name is Bobby Harris. He's my fraternity brother. But he remembered me when I was before the school board of coaching and mentoring me. Do you know every day, every Friday, he sends me a message. You know what the message is? It's a small statement, but it's critical because he says, "Happy Friday." But this is a person who just wants me to know I'm still here. But he's been with me through the ups and downs, coaching me all along the way. But I have numerous people like that. And I will say this to you too, and the Lord would want me to say this. They've come from all walks of life. And they've been diverse as well. African Americans, you've been a mentor of mine, a supporter of mine. I had white people who've been supporters. I've had people from all walks of life that have helped me in one way or another. And that's the honest truth for I know the people that are listening to this, that there's been various people. It's been like a rainbow of people that have supported me throughout my career.
And that's really, if all of us were to be honest, that's exactly the way it is. Nobody gets to anywhere without that support and mentoring. You have mentored me several times. I remember us sitting in your office, when I come in and we shut the door and we talk, and you have supported me and mentored me as well. And there's nobody I know who genuinely succeeds by themselves doing it alone. I remember something that I heard that really made an impression on me. When you're wrapped up in yourself, you make a very small package.
Well,
You make a very small package. None of us is as good as all of us. So recognizing that you cannot achieve anything great by yourself. Reaching out and leaning on other people and recognizing that you need others is what you're saying. Lean on others, know that you need them, support others, and receive support from others. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. And the point that you were making, and I want to go back to, is when you think about early childhood education, that's my degree. And I wind up in this political world, and I wind up in a utility company, and I wind up in boardrooms that no one in my family has ever experienced with board members or in corporate rooms and boards. There's no way that I make that transition without the good Lord putting people in place to educate me, to help me, to understand that moment. And I've had many people. I speak about, Joe Rigby, but you know what? He always used to give me tremendous feedback in settings on how he thought I presented or how he thought I could have done something differently, right, to improve in the meeting. I just thank all the people who've stepped up to help me.
Ken, I'm going to ask you a question that you're a very introspective person.
Yeah.
You're a very reflective person. What do you think are some of your greatest strengths? I know some of them that I think of, but I want to hear, what do you think are some of your greatest strengths?
I think without question is I have in front of my house, I have it right near the door. It's a rock called Perseverance. It says Perseverance, and behind Perseverance is the good Lord. And here's what I do know that my strength is. I have the ability to hang in there with people and with tough situations and being loyal and not walk away. I've been tested that way, to stay there and be supportive, and it's a key strength that I have. And I think part of the strength comes from of being in foster care. As a young man, having to go into homes that you didn't know who the foster care parents were, to foreign places, and being able to shift and to adapt. And I think the good Lord has given me that gift to be able to shift and to adapt to very trying and tough situations, and not to run.
I tell you, Ken, one of the things that I know about is your work ethic. If you're dealing with Ken, he wakes, I don't know, maybe I've got emails from him sometimes at 4:30 in the morning.
I worked on that over time.
I've got emails from you at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. If he needs to get something done, he's on it. And bright and early, there's an email from Ken. He's going to be on it. So your work ethic is amazing. People look at you today and where you're sitting, and it's a good story, but it's not an easy story. Your story is a story of hard work, dedication, perseverance, commitment, loyalty. Your story is a story in one word of faithfulness. At different stages, different transitions. And what we're looking at today is what that can do. Because if you're joining us today, we are on set with Ken Parker, top executive and corporate officer. And Ken, bottom line of this is, it doesn't just happen. You put in the work. You had tremendous obstacles, but you overcame that. If you're on the other side of this camera today, this story should give you hope. It doesn't matter what you're facing right now. It doesn't matter what hand you're dealt. Ken's story is letting you know you can win regardless of the hands that you're dealt. If you're in foster care or things have gone terrible and it looks like the whole world is broken, all around you, think about this. He lost his parents when he was about 2 years old. Was in foster care. According to normal conventional wisdom, he should be in jail. He should be a criminal. But he is here, a top executive and a corporate officer in a Fortune 500 company. Your story inspires me. It gives me hope. It lets me know that nothing is impossible with God. Nothing is impossible to those who believe. And you are really the definition of that saying and that scripture. Now, let me ask you a question, Ken. If there was anything that you could change in your journey has not been easy. Losing your mom when you were 2 years old, your dad walking away from the family, going into foster care, sometimes when you were loved, sometimes when you were not so loved. You mean becoming a groundskeeper to being a janitor, and when you got the job as a janitor, that was your big job. That was your first prominent job, right?
That was a very important
That was a
moment.
very important moment that you had a job, you were a janitor.
Yeah.
And to grow and transition from that, to be the president of Atlantic City Electric in New Jersey, all the way up to being a senior vice president and corporate officer of Pepco Holdings, Inc. Now, is there anything that you would change in your journey? It's been a hard journey. What would you have to say about that?
I wouldn't change anything in my journey. And because I think the good Lord takes us all through our own paths. My journey is the journey that He wanted me to take. I said to my wife as I was making my way to this interview that I wanted to convey this, and I think I needed to say it from my heart. Whether it's foster care or people dealing with drug addiction or depression, mental illness, there's not a human being that walks this earth that doesn't have a cross to bear, that doesn't have a challenge that they have to overcome. So no one's journey is greater than any other person's journey. I know people who have their parents that have challenges. So this idea of not having parents doesn't mean that one is a victim.
That's right.
God is great. I know that.
That's right.
And I know that everyone carries their own challenges. And I wanted to say that because I don't want, my sister always taught me never to be a victim. God loves you. And I would just say that to anyone. God loves us.
This right there defines the man that Ken is. This right there defines the man that he is. What you're hearing is this takes away all the excuses. Ken is not denying the reality of the circumstances, but he's saying you can win. Don't become a victim. It depends on your perspective, how you look at the circumstances. He takes all the excuses away. I have no excuse. You have no excuse. Regardless of how bad your circumstances are, by the grace of God and with hard work and faith in God, you can rise up out of the ashes like the phoenix and live to excel and live to be all that you can be. This is what the story of Ken Parker tells us. Ken, as we begin to wrap up our show today, how do you balance family life? I know you had a very hectic schedule in DC. How do you balance that and family life? Talk to us about that work-life balance.
When I was working
Yes.
within the corporation, one of the things I learned at the latter part of my career, I thought it was important to begin that my children and Sherry understood the work that I did, and the only way you could really do that is actually let them see it. So sometimes we would go to different events and company events so they can get a familiarity with it. But I would say to you that I've never believed in the word like balance, like 50-50, because I don't believe it's that. I think a lot has to do with the quality of time that you put in, and you have to find those particular moments to find the quality of time to put in. But you have to be committed to it. I will say, Sherry and my children know that I wasn't home a whole lot, but I'll tell you, I never missed birthdays. I never missed school events and things like that, things that were important to them. I think that's critical to keep in mind. Now, since I'm in retirement, it's a beautiful thing. I think in some way, we're going to see how long this lasts for Sherry, because she sees me every single day. I call her name all the time, but it's beautiful to be home. And the 30 years that I had with the company were fabulous. But I'll tell you one thing, it's great to be home because I'm more, you know what I'm saying, conscious of what's going on. And Gloria, if I could say one other thing that I was remiss to say something to you too, for the audience. We were talking about challenges and no excuses. So as a young man through my journey, I have older siblings, right? Some have transitioned on. And when I talked about this thing of mental illness and incarceration and things like that, drug addiction, these are things that I actually seen in my family. These are hypothetical. These are things that we've experienced. And as a young man, I've been to visiting in state prisons, and I've seen what's going on. But you know, I didn't have my parents, but God placed me with brothers and sisters that taught me. I want to say that they taught me a lot through their experience of things that I should avoid and not do. And I want to, commend them for that. Because in some way, the young one gets a chance to kind of see what the older ones, what went well and what didn't go well, And I just wanted to express that as well.
You know what, Ken? I'm going to pull that out as we round up. What Ken is saying is that his older siblings and other friends who made the wrong choices were able to pull you aside and say, don't do this. This doesn't work, right? So if you're out there, even if you've made your own mistakes, you can be that voice of reason to tell your siblings, don't idolize what I did. That was a wrong choice. You don't want to go there. You don't want to do this. You can do something different. We have come to the end of our discussion with Ken Parker. And I can go on and on. This is a story that every time I think about it, it inspires me to, to rise up and to move forward. Because it tells me again that God is good. And if we trust him, like your sister said, God loves you. And knowing that empowers you to go out there and beat the odds, which is what you have done. So Ken, can you just summarize for us? What would be your takeaways to those who are listening to you today? I don't know where they are, in different places all around the world, listening to us today on Facebook or YouTube, or listening to us on radio. What would you tell them? What are your takeaways for today's discussion?
My biggest takeaway would be that God is all powerful. It's through his grace and mercy and favor that we can overcome anything. And no matter where you're at a particular time, just call on the Lord. There's the worldly things, and then there's the spiritual realm.
Without a doubt, you and I share that very closely. Folks, we have come to the end of our show today, and we have been on set with Ken Parker, who started life out on what people would say would be the wrong side of the tracks. His parents died at a very young age, but God put in his life a wonderful older sister who was 20 years older than you were. But she stood with him and with their family and pulled them out of the foster care system and took care of them. Patricia, once more, thank you for being the woman that you are and the angel to Ken and the rest of your family. And then God brought into your life a wonderful woman, Sherry, your wife, and her dad who became your mentor. Sherry, we applaud you. Thank you so much for the role that you played in Ken's life. And Ken went all the way, your hard work, your dedication, your perseverance to where you are now. I respect you and I honor you and I thank God for the man of God that you are, because you're not only a corporate executive, but you are a man of God. And it's very clear on this show where your help comes from. Your help does not come from people. God uses people, but your help ultimately comes from God. And we thank you for sharing that. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to us today. Thank you so much for watching us on Facebook or YouTube. And if you've been listening to us, this is The Grace Talk. Thank you for being here with us to listen to the story of Ken Parker. God bless you and good night.